Hello, I'm Lieutenant Hazelwood from Kent Army Cadet Force, and today I'm going to show you how to build shelter. Shelter in the British Army and in the Cadet Force is known as a basher and is made using a basher sheet. It's very simple to make and we don't need a lot of equipment, but if done correctly it can be extremely effective. The idea is to give you shelter from the rain if it rains, give you somewhere to sleep and somewhere to perform all your personal admin. The equipment that you need to build your basher is down here. So first off, you need a basher sheet. This is a large waterproof sheet, normally camouflage or a dark colour. It's got two sides to it. One side has got like a corded seam on it, and the other side has got a waterproof seam which looks kind of waxed on the other side. This is the side you want facing out, that's the more waterproof side. Next, you'll need some bungee cords or bungee straps, which are elasticated and have metal hooks on either end. Really effective, just have to be careful with these because they can be quite dangerous if you stretch these out too much, and if one pings back can hit you in the eye or hit somebody. An alternative to the bungees is just to use some simple paracord or dark coloured string. Just make sure if you're using this stuff that it's something that's strong enough and not going to break halfway through the night. The next thing you'll need is some tent pegs. So need probably 6 to 8 of these in your kit. It's very simple, just lightweight and something that's not going to be too heavy to carry around. If you lose your tent pegs or if you damage them, you can always resort to using some twigs. So just make sure you've got some sturdy, strong enough twigs that you break down to the right size and they can kind of see you through until you can get some more tent pegs. And that's it. The general area where you will set up your shelter will be decided for you by your staff. This is known as a patrol harbour and is an area large enough to accommodate a group of cadets and will give you space to set up shelter, cook, sleep, perform personal admin, and is also good for defence. When it comes to setting up your shelter, you will pair up with a battle buddy and you will work together to build your shelter that you will share. You can then help each other when it comes to preparing meals and other admin duties. What I'm going to do now is show you how to set up a basher. So, first thing you need to do to set up your shelter is find a space with flat ground between two trees which are far enough apart to accommodate your basher. What I'm going to do is lay my basher out in between to make sure I've got enough space. As you can see, the basher has got a bit of space at either end between the trees, so this is ideal. Before I start putting the basher up though, I'm going to clear the ground underneath my basher of any twigs or branches that might stick up into my sleeping area and make it uncomfortable to sleep. Be careful not to remove too much of the undergrowth, as it will then be really obvious when you leave the area that you were here. So only remove anything that's going to really be uncomfortable. Now that I've cleared the ground a little bit, it's going to be a lot better to sleep on, so I can now lay the basher out again and then start to affix the basher onto the trees. So the first thing I will do is make sure the basher is the correct way up with the waterproof side facing up, and then lay it out in between the trees. The type of basher I'm going to build first is going to be called a lean-to basher, which means the front end of the shelter is open over here and the rest of the shelter tails away back from me here. Now that I've laid the basher out, you can see that I've left the front edge of the basher in line with the two trees. What I'm going to do now is use the bungees to fix these onto the trees. This tree is quite wide, so I'm going to use 2 bungees here to fix onto the corner of my basher. So these can be connected together, wrapped around the tree, initially around waist height, and both hooks can then clip into the front corner of the basher. This is a much thinner tree, so I'll probably get away with just 1 bungee on this side. So pull the basher tight, and with both hooks through, that is now the front of the basher set. Now that the front of the basher is set, I can use my tent pegs to peg out the back. Make sure when you're putting your tent pegs in the ground, you pull the basher nice and tight, as this will help any rain fall off. So you've got tension in there, and that the pegs go in at an angle of around 45 degrees away from the basher. So my tent pegs have gone in that direction, so the basher is pulling against it that way. It's good to do both corners of your basher on the back, and then add some extra tent pegs in the middle once you've got the correct tension. One alternative, if you need extra space under your basher, is to place your tent pegs a bit further away. And then use a bungee to affix onto the basher. So 1 bungee, both hooks into the basher, and stretch it back. Now that the basher's finished, you'll see that it actually sags a little bit on the top. So I could get it a bit more tense by using more bungees, but you also notice in the middle of the basher, there is a cord which can be used to get another bungee or some string and attach to a tree if you've got any branches above you. Today, I haven't got any branches above me, so I've got a sturdy stick. I'm going to use that inside the basher to lift the centre of the basher up. That now will help any rain run off the basher if it rains, but it also gives us more room inside for doing our personal admin. Now that the bash is set up, I can set up my sleeping space. So I've got my Bergen here. Top of my Bergen, I have a ground mat. So this is a foldable square ground mat. You can have roll mats, you can have self-inflating ground mats. Really important to have though, because although this gives you a bit of comfort, the main aim of this is to insulate you from the cold of the ground. So you really shouldn't be sleeping out overnight in a sleeping bag unless you've got one of these underneath you. So I'm going to unfold this and put this in the sleeping area. Now that the ground mat's in there, I can get my sleeping bag in there. So this is a 4-season sleeping bag. You want nothing less than a 3-season sleeping bag for sleeping outside, and make sure it's a specifically made sleeping bag for outdoor use. So quite often you will be issued a sleeping bag to use so that your staff know you've got the right thing. But if you want to go and buy your own sleeping bag, just make sure to check that you're getting the right thing. Before I put the sleeping bag in, I also have a bivy bag. Now a bivy bag is a waterproof cover for my sleeping bag, which adds a bit of extra insulation and also adds to the waterproof. As you can see, the bivy bag looks very much like a really thin sleeping bag, and all I'm going to do is put my sleeping bag inside it with the top of the sleeping bag showing so I can still get in and out of it. There you have it. That's my sleeping bag in the bivvy bag. I'll now put that inside on top of the ground mat, and that's going to be really nice and warm and cozy for sleeping in tonight. Right, that's my sleeping area set up. If you remember, I said that you'll be doing this in pairs, so with your battle buddy, they're going to be the other side of the basher. That will be their sleeping space, and then in the middle you can store your Bergens and your kit and any of your personal admin. Once your basher, your sleeping area and your admin area is all sorted and you're happy, there's a few other things to think about. So firstly will be a stand to position. So several meters in front of your basher will be an area designated by your staff or your senior cadets where you will go to in the case of an attack or a potential enemy threat. If you hear stand to, whether it's shouted or spoken quietly, you would move to that position with your rifle and await for further instructions or, as I say, a potential attack. Something else would be at night time, you would lower your basher down a little bit. So at the moment we're about hip height. I would probably go down to a little bit like knee height. So grabbing the bungees and moving them down will lower the front of your basher. During the day, when you don't require your basher, this should either be packed away completely or lowered right down and camouflaged. And using some of the foliage and branches around you, you can hide your basher. Right, that's it. I've shown you the lean-to basher position. This is the type of setup I would always use and is probably the most common. However, there are a few variations. So what I'll do now is I'll just show you a few of those so you can make your own decision and have an experiment about what you like best. This first variation is called an A-frame. The setup is exactly the same as the lean-to. The only difference is I've fixed the bungees to the middle of the basher and then have equal amounts of the basher coming left and right. So this makes a more traditional tent sort of shape to the basher. This design is probably better if you've got harsh weather. So if it's a lot of rain and wind, this will give you a bit more shelter from the elements. However, it's a lot harder to get in and out. There's a little bit less space in there for personal admin, especially if you're sharing this setup with someone else. And if you have to get out quickly to defend your position, it's going to take a bit longer. The next type of basher setup is called an open type. So you can see here, I've not used any tent pegs, and because of the space I've had to use some extra bungees, and the basher is completely open all the way around. So this type will only really be used in the centre of patrol harbour, might be used by a commander, but again you've got to find the right sort of space and have the right sort of equipment to set up. The last variation I want to show you is back to the A-frame design again, but what I've done now is demonstrated how you can build a shelter if you don't have any trees. So what I've used here are basher poles, which you can buy. They're adjustable, so you can adjust the height of them here. Goes through the top loop of your basher there, and there's a spike on the bottom to go in the ground. You then affix your bungee onto the front of the basher and stretch that out and fix that to the floor, and that's kind of your connection instead of fixing it to a tree. So again, with these, you can buy these, but you could also improvise the same thing if you can find some branches and sticks.